Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I'm your guide, Derek Hayes. Shh. Did you hear that? Could it be the voice of the dead? Well, you can bet your brown boots that it is. And tonight's episode is full of voices just like them. Stories about EVPs, disembodied voices, mimicry, and more, all assembled here together in tonight's episode. So turn up the volume and dim those lights. We have all sorts of spooky in store for your ears here this evening. Beginning here with an entry from Tim.
Hi, my name's Tim. I live in Michigan now, but the story I'm going to tell happened in Green Bay, Wisconsin, maybe 30 years ago. I guess to start, I'll say this. Having odd things happen when I was a kid, especially through my childhood, teenage years, it was pretty normal. I guess we didn't think too much about it. My family and I had 3 brothers and a sister. And, odd things would happen, toys turning on, doors opening and closing. We moved around a lot, but whatever those things were, they seemed to follow us around, whatever it was. But this particular story is the result of a rule I made for myself. If I saw or heard anything, to make sure that it actually was there, that it wasn't my imagination. Very early in my life, I made a rule that if no one else saw it or heard it, it didn't happen. It was just my imagination. Well, one of these things that would happen to me fairly frequently as a child, maybe as far back as I can remember, 8 or 9 years old, occasionally, I'd have nights where I was going to bed and I'd hear, I don't know what you would call it. It sounded like a crowd of people under my bed, as ridiculous as that might sound. It sounded like a crowd of people very far away. If you heard an old battlefield that they'll put on TV sometimes, if somebody's remembering an old battlefield or something like that, they're remembering like the horror of the sounds of people screaming and the metal clashing. Well, if you take all the metal clashing out of it, that's what I heard. It sounded like thousands of people, hundreds or thousands, I don't know, just yelling. Sometimes it would get louder and louder. I had convinced myself this was all in my head. But at times, when the voices got really loud, my bed would start shaking. And again, there's no one else there, even though I shared a room with my brother. They had their own beds, both my brothers did. So for years, I really thought this was my imagination, and I just went on with it. Then one day when I was a teenager, I was in an apartment that I was sharing with my brothers, and my cousin was there, my cousin Todd. We were taking turns sharing the bedroom, and it was my week for the bedroom. Todd was staying with us for the summer, and it was the middle of the day, and I don't remember why I was laying down during the day. I don't know if we were up late. It was during the summer. But I laid down to take a nap, and this is one of these times when I started hearing these voices, and the bed started shaking, and it was broad daylight, which wasn't typical. And I was trying to figure out, what? I don't know if this is in my head or not. So I got out of my bed, went in the other room, and I told my cousin, hey, you want to come talk to me for a minute? I got something I want to talk to you about. So he said, sure. Came in the bedroom. I said, Todd, have a seat. And he sat down on the bed, immediately jumped back up and said, what's going on with your bed? It's shaking. And I thought, I knew it. Now, we went and checked the other beds, and it was only my bed shaking. And Todd, he didn't hear the voices. I could hear them, but he couldn't hear them. And I didn't tell him that I heard them. And I didn't tell him the bed was shaking beforehand. But he was convinced, and he was freaked out a little bit by all of it, obviously. I guess the funny part of the story is this. I felt very vindicated until it got dark. And at that point, I didn't feel so much vindicated, just kind of terrified, thinking to myself, that was really happening all those years? Well, in any case, eventually it stopped. I would say in my late 20s, a lot of that stuff that was happening just went away. That was on Mather Street in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that happened. Thank you for your time. I like your podcast, and have a good day.
Thank you, Tim. A crowd of people, or a battle going on under your bed. Now that's a detail that I've never heard before, and a detail that really stuck with me. And furthermore, the fact that the action going on beneath Tim's bed got so rowdy that it shook him. Literally. Well, that's wild stuff. And I think it was clever that you sat your cousin down without telling him why. It's a good way to keep his opinion unbiased. It's a great story, Tim. Freaky, whatever it was. All right, gang, let's do one more story. Nora from Tennessee. Welcome to the show.
Hello. My name is Nora Gower, and I live in Rock Island, Tennessee. I lived with my family in Nashville before we moved out here to Rock Island. And this is where this story takes place. So I've just had my fourth baby, and I am just doing dishes or doing something, got 4 kids. So phone rings, and I'm talking to my mother-in-law. I had just had my youngest one, and she's calling, checking up on me. Hey, how's the baby? As our conversation ends. And I said, oh, Nanny, he's doing good. He's sleeping right now. And we hang up. After I hang up, I hear like a little voice saying, go check on him. And I'm thinking, well, a little voice, he's such a light sleeper, I'll wake him up. I'm arguing with the voice, right? Okay. So I hear again, go check on him. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check on him. I'm checking on him. And I go in, and my baby is blue. So I squeegee him out. I get the little nose thing and squeegee him out. And he lived, but I don't know. It was just the strangest thing. Anyway, that's my story. Thank you again. Nora out.
Thank you, Nora. Now, as incredible as your account was, it's almost exactly like at least half a dozen others that we've received over the years. A mysterious voice that urges you to check on the children. And in each instance, it goes the exact same way. The baby is indeed in peril of some sort. And if the voice hadn't warned the parent, tragedy may have struck. Awesome stuff, Nora. And we can't thank you enough for sharing here tonight. All right, monster fans, let's take a quick break, but when I come back, more voices from the beyond. Don't touch that dial.
Like you notice it.
All right, gang. Next up, the voice of a loved one from beyond the grave. Please welcome Isaac from Arkansas.
Hey, Derek. This is Isaac from Arkansas. This story takes place in Colorado. For background, I never considered myself someone who's very, in tune with the supernatural. I'm not someone who's gone out of my way to at all mess with that. Up until this story happened. I was hanging out with some family in Colorado. It was my last day. I had a great time. I was out at my car packing up very early in the morning for the drive back to Arkansas. It was around 5, 6 in the morning, very, very early. I was the only person out in the street. I heard the very distinct voice of one of my family members telling me that they love me. And it was so precise and so real that I spun around, and I was a little bit weirded out in the moment. At the time, I chalked it up to being around family members, same side of the family that all have relatively similar voices, and I just thought, I'm hearing something. It's obviously, no big deal, right? Big day ahead of me. I'd forget about it. It took me a while to call in about this story because of the, painful memory associated with it, because the family member whose voice that I heard happened to be my grandma, and she was not on this trip with us. I was out with her daughter, my aunt, and, I just thought at the time, no big deal. I've been out to this place a dozen times with my grandma. Maybe I just associated it with her. The reason I'm calling in about this story is that specific day was the day that she passed. And I don't know what time of day that she passed due to the unfortunate circumstances around her passing. But, I do think that if there is some way for her to get a message out, she's the type of lady that would have done it. And she wanted me to know that I love her. And yeah, it definitely has now shifted me into being more open about the possibility of that. And it gave me a little bit of hope, to be honest. It was a very sweet moment that I'm happy that I do sincerely believe she was able to break through whatever veil is there and tell me that she loved me. And, I'm getting a little teary-eyed thinking about it right now. So thank you so much for the show, man. You do a great job, and looking forward to hearing this if you use it. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Isaac. Now, at this point, you cannot convince me that there isn't a period of time after one's death that they can still reach out and deliver messages to living loved ones. And based on my personal experiences, and many of the experiences I've looked into over the years, that time period seems to only last about a week or two, at most. But Isaac's call calls into question the parameters on the other end of that spectrum. How soon after one's death are they able to reach out? Because it sounds like from Isaac's story that his grandmother made contact very soon after she passed. She really must have wanted to get that message out, because she wasted no time in delivering it. And I think it's okay to see that as a positive, Isaac. She cared about you enough to reach out from wherever she is now. So thank you again, Isaac, for calling in, and we're very sorry for your loss. Now, gang, if you have a story you would like to share here on the program, just call our hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can record a voice memo and email it to me at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. All right, speaking of sharing stories, let's dive right in to this next one. Join me in Iowa, where Zach is waiting to regale us with his experience.
Hi, Derek. My name is Zach. I live in Dubuque, Iowa. A few years ago, I went down to Ottumwa, Iowa, which is southeastern Iowa, to spend a weekend at my in-laws' house. And we were using their primary bathroom, my wife and I. And to get into the primary bedroom and the bathroom from the hallway, there's a room before those rooms. It's like a powder room that has the closets. It's a somewhat older house for Iowa. It's probably 100 years old. It's a long house. So this is one end of the house that the primary bedroom sits on top of. And so the kitchen is at the exact opposite end of the house. My sister-in-law was out of the house. I believe my father-in-law was down at his work. I believe my mother-in-law was in the kitchen at the opposite end of the house. I think my wife had gone to take a nap, but she had just used the bathroom in the primary bedroom before me. And I closed the door from the hallway into the powder room and then the door to the bathroom. And she had just finished, and I was in there showering, and it wasn't very long in the shower. And I remember ending the shower and hearing what I thought was someone trying to talk to me from the other side of the door. And again, this is a very long house, and she was downstairs, kind of towards the middle part of the house. And pretty sure my mother-in-law was at the opposite end of the kitchen, and I thought it might have been my wife who had forgotten something. And so I think I remember saying something like, "Hold on 1 second." And I heard a little bit more of like a murmured talk. It was muffled. And as I went to reach for the bathroom door, there was this big bang on the other side of the door. And I thought maybe she was frustrated and I didn't get to the door quick enough, or something had happened, or she bumped into it. And it was almost like an angry hit with a fist or your foot. And I remember trying to throw the towel on really quick and open up the door to look. And I opened up the bathroom door, and there was nobody in the powder room. And the door from the powder room to the hallway was still closed. And I remember shutting the bathroom door, getting dressed, and then going to the hallway just a few minutes later to see if there was anybody upstairs or if something had happened. Nobody was upstairs. I remember going downstairs thinking, did somebody come in through the front door? Nobody had come home. So this was an unexplainable event, and I remember explaining it to my in-laws, and they didn't like to hear about it. There's been other kind of questionable things at their house that has happened, but we're trying to be logic about it and explain it away. But this was one that I tried to be logic about it, but there is kind of an unexplainable, if nobody was in the area, what was it that I heard and who hit the door? Again, it could have been something from outside. It could have been a door closing somewhere, but nobody was closing anything. And again, the kitchen is way at the other end, and there's no doors to close in the kitchen. So just thought I'd share this. But I love your podcast. Keep it up. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Zach. You know, I think many people share that nightmare, discovering that you might not be alone in the shower. Now, maybe it's the vulnerability of the situation. Maybe it's the fact that you're naked as a mole rat. Or perhaps it's that you're continuously needing to close your eyes to keep the soap and water out of them. But something tells me it's a combination of all those aspects that make us feel so susceptible in the shower. So creepy stuff, Zach. We sure do appreciate you taking the time to share. Now, next up, we visit North Carolina. Please welcome Rod to the show.
Hey, Derek. My name's Rod. I'm from North Carolina. Let's start off, I want to say the beginning of the year, I work a night job, 12-hour shifts. We're allowed to go outside and walk the premises. If we get too tired, try to stay awake. So in summer times, I like to go out, walk around the building, do a couple laps, a couple rounds just to stay awake. There was a time where I got into mobile gaming, Call of Duty. I wasn't able to pick up servers inside the building. So I go outside. This is about between 2:45 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting beside my car, playing my game. So beside the parking lot of my job, there's a church, and they have a cemetery. So as I'm sitting by my car playing this mobile game, all of a sudden up to my left, I hear a hello. Now, to me, a hello is words that some older generation would use. So when I heard this hello, I looked over to my left. I didn't see nothing. Now, across from the cemetery, there's a couple of houses. And I've been out there sometimes, and all I see is their lights on. Never have seen anybody out there that late. So when I hear this hello, I get this, odd feeling. It just shivers down my spine. Just talking about it now just brings shivers right back. Just the way I heard this hello was like somebody was forcing to say this hello. It's just freaking creepy, man. After I heard that hello, I looked down at my mobile game for a split second, and I walked my butt right back inside the building. I didn't run, I walked. I thought if I run, this thing's going to come after me. Thank you. Hope to hear my story and hope you can use it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Rod. I mean, it could be worse. At least the disembodied voice uttered something friendly. There are so many worse things that it could have said, other than hello. But I bet that does little to settle Rod's mind. And frankly, I think it's hard to blame him. Thanks again, Rod, for sharing the tale.
He's talking to the world. Every Sunday morning at 10 a.m.
All right, up next, let's head to the Peach State. Please welcome Christina from Georgia.
Hey Derek, this is Christina from Atlanta, Georgia. I wanted to tell you about a story that happened to us. It was last year, so it was Halloween. So we didn't take our daughter trick-or-treating that year. We were super busy with stuff, so we went to a church Halloween party near the house, and it was outside in the parking lot. And there's also a huge cemetery to the left of it. But this parking lot was really big too. They had rides and different things. It was probably 15 minutes until dusk in the evening. So we have been around different rides and different things to do for our daughter. And we were just standing there in this one long line. So I was just kind of tired, kind of in a dazed state. My husband and I were standing pretty close. Our daughter was in front of us. And I hear what I thought was him. I heard him say something. And at the time, I didn't catch that it was super fast, like almost inaudible, super fast. At the time, I understood what it was, and I don't remember now what it was. And I looked at him and I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "I didn't say anything." And I said, "No, you said this." And at the time, I didn't catch how fast it was, and it was right in my ear. And he said, "I didn't say anything. We've been standing here for the past 2 minutes, not saying anything." And then as soon as he said, "Well, what did you say that it said?" And I could not even remember what was said in my ear. It was super weird. It reminded me of the audio that you shared a few years ago, This Guy's in the Woods, and he's recording, and it just sounds like really just gibberish. It was like, blah, 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 blah. That's exactly what it sounded like. Like I said, we were right next to a cemetery. Could have been an entity trying to communicate. I have no idea. It could have been just me, that I was tired. I was just staring off the days. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. Thought you might want to hear about it. Talk to you later, Derek. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Christina. I believe you're referring to samurai chatter, which is what many researchers refer to this sound as. And most of those same researchers claim that a creature known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch is responsible for those sounds. Now, since Christina brought it up, I'll go ahead and play a sample real quick from the recording she referred to. The following clip is from the Sierra Sounds, recordings made in California's Sierra Mountains by Ron Moorhead and Al Berry, back in the 1970s.
Like you're laughing at it.
No, I'm not saying it was Sasquatch, but I'm not saying that it wasn't either. Thanks again, Christina, for ringing in. Now a disembodied voice and a disembodied appendage. Please welcome Hannah out of Minnesota.
Hi, Derek and fellow listeners. So this is Hannah from Minnesota. When I was about 19 or 20, I was currently living with my mom as I was doing my internship from my old college. And at this point, I already had multiple paranormal experiences, but I never had something that happened like this. So I was in my bed. I was fully awake at the time. I know I've never had sleep paralysis or anything of the sort like that. But anyways, I felt something kind of crawling up my bed covers. It feels like as if, like, imagine one of your pets is crawling under the bed covers and, like, coming near you, that kind of thing. That's exactly what it felt like. And at this point, I was pretty freaked out because I had no idea what the heck it was. And then all of a sudden, I felt something grab my ankle. It felt just like a hand, except I couldn't feel, like, any heat or cold, but I could feel the sensation of fingers wrapping around my ankle. At this point, I was absolutely terrified to look. I was too scared I was going to see something. So I just kind of did what any sane person would do in that moment and hid my head under the covers and hoped it would go away. So afterwards, that was maybe 30 seconds or a minute. Finally, whatever grabbed my ankle just let go. I didn't really think much of it at the time because I was pretty scared and I really didn't feel comfortable investigating it at the time. But I did tell my mom later on, and she confirmed to me that she wasn't awake. She didn't play a prank on me or anything like that. So I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but that was the first time I've ever felt something. Anyways, moving on, I was starting my internship at a wildlife rehab center. And at this rehab center, we have a separate room off from the main room that has, like, all of our ICU patients. So I very distinctly remember going into the ICU room to take care of some of our really sick patients. And I remember when I went into that room, there was no one in the main room. It was only me in the ICU room. And for this room, there was a solid door and solid walls. Can't really hear anything that was happening outside of there. And no one could hear what was going on inside that room. So when I was taking care of all the injured animals, I heard something lean into my ear and say, "It's okay, Hannah." And I freak out. I remember screaming and falling over and frantically looking around this tiny 5-foot wall, trying to see if anyone was in there with me. And I saw nobody. So I'm still freaking out. And I open up the door, look out the main room, and there's nobody out there. So I'm just like, okay, this is really freaking creepy. I have no idea what the heck just happened. But after that incident, I've yet to experience a paranormal encounter ever again. So what went from my most terrifying paranormal encounter to someone whispering in my ear to now just nothing happening to me, it all seems kind of weird. And I can't verify that they're connected somehow, but for some reason, it seems like they possibly could be, considering I've yet to have another paranormal experience since. That happened when I was 20, and I'm currently 24. Just thought it was pretty weird and wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I can't say they're connected either, but it sounds like there was, at the very least, a period in your life where you were susceptible to this sort of activity. Perhaps you simply grew out of it. Or maybe it was, like you suggested, Hannah, a string of experiences, all connected in some way. Now, I wish I had some answers for you, but frankly, I don't. But I do thank you, Hannah, for taking the time to call in. Now, gang, don't forget about our merchandise shop. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click that shop tab to get your hands on the latest and greatest Monsters Among Us merch. monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab for full access. All right, our subsequent caller is no stranger to the program. A repeat offender, you might say. Well, let's see what Lumen from Oregon has in store for us this time.
Hi, Derek. My name is Lumen. I am from the state of Oregon. So this story took place something so years ago. Little background. I am fifth generation farmer on the same property that my mother is farming on, my grandfather farmed on, his father farmed on, and so forth. This is in rural Oregon, closer to the town of Woodburn. This is probably the third house that I've lived in this property. And it was a time where my grandfather had passed over the farm to my mother, so my family had moved into the main farmhouse. And the main farmhouse has had several stories of just ghostly activity, voices, weird encounters. It goes on and on and on and on. But this one took place when I was probably 13, and it was one of the ones that stuck in my mind so much that I can remember the exact time that it occurred. So one night, I'm sitting in my bed, I'm reading a book with my light on. It is 1:45 in the morning, very late. Everyone is asleep. I have my window slightly cracked open, curtains drawn, because I do not like looking out at night. Something about it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I've never liked the farm at night. And I remember sitting there reading, and I just hear a tap coming from the window on my bedside. And I hear like a little kid's voice, kind of echoey, going, "Can I come in? Hello, can I come in, please? Hello?" And I just stared dead at that window, did not acknowledge it, did not say anything back, reached over, turned my lamp off, and laid down. And I knew it wasn't probably like a video or any audio that could have been saved. I wasn't allowed any technology until I was like closer to high school. So I didn't have a phone, I didn't have a laptop, I had nothing that could have played this audio. I knew for a fact it was not my sisters playing a prank at me, because my little sisters, one was probably like 12, one was probably 8, and the other was like an infant. And so they weren't going to be on the second floor roof at 1:45 at night. And I knew it wasn't someone playing around on the property, crawling onto the roof and trying to stare me, because we live down a half-a-mile long driveway. Our house is hidden by trees. We are surrounded by the forest and other farm fields. No one actually knows our house is there. Like, even when we give them direction, they get very lost and very confused, and they end up in our lower field somehow. But it absolutely horrified me. It's not like the first time I've had an encounter in that room. It is one of the original foundations of the bedroom. My grandmother had remodeled that house like twice or so, and then I know my great-grandmother had remodeled that house once before. But out of the 4 upstairs bedrooms, these 2 bedrooms were the only 2 that had not been touched, and mine was one of them. I've had way too many encounters in that room for me to just chalk it up to nothing, but I had gotten so used to just ignoring it and pretending like it wasn't there because of how many times it happened. Like, my mother's had encounters when she slept in that room when she was a kid. My uncles have had the most. They both would swap this bedroom growing up because they both couldn't handle what they were experiencing. But that was one of the most scariest ones. Like, I'd never heard voices before until that very night. And it made me feel like I was crazy because no one believed me when I would tell them. But thank you. Your podcast is great. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you, Lumen. The voice of a little kid from outside the window, asking to come inside. Now, there could have been actual children out there, perhaps needing assistance of some sort. Or maybe it was like Lumen suggested, that these might have been ghosts of some sort. Or, allow me to toss out a third option, one that seems to make sense given the situation and the message conveyed. What if these were the infamous black-eyed kids? An eerie entry, Lumen, no matter how you slice it. Thank you again for sharing the message. Now, gang, if you would, please join me for this next anonymously submitted story.
Hey, this is my first time calling in. This is not my story, but my brother's story. This is in Michigan, outside Bangor. Essentially, my brother and my sister were both at home. Double-wide trailer, my dad made some modifications to it. Essentially, my brother's washing dishes in the kitchen. He's facing out and away from the hallway that connects to the other 2 bedrooms and the bathroom. Basically, the hallway is behind him and to his right. He's doing the dishes, looking out And my sister comes out, says, hey, I'm going to go down the street and help the neighbor with their animals. He's like, okay. And it's a while later when he's continuing to do the dishes, when from the hallway he hears, Christian, come here. And he goes, no, you come here. My hands are wet. I'm doing dishes. Christian, come here. And from what I remember, this goes back and forth for a second before the realization hits him that she's not back there. She's over at the neighbors, helping them with their animals. And he freaks out, gets the hell out of here and goes down to the neighbors to confirm that she's actually over there. Good show. I honestly hope to hear this while I'm at work someday. See ya.
Thank you, mystery caller. Now, what is it that makes these mimicry stories so spooky? The disembodied voice aspect is unsettling. Yet so is the fact that whatever is doing the talking, it's posing as a family member. But for me, I think the creepiest part is that they're always beckoning. Come here, come outside, come over to the tree line. What exactly do they have in mind? Now, because of that, these sorts of calls always give me the shivers. So thank you again, caller, for the latest occurrence. Now, folks, I have many more stories to share, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, right after this.
Distance never seemed to be an issue with him.
Send them to us. Over $72 million in Sunbus benefits.
Okay, so this next one comes to us anonymously. But I can tell you that the story takes place in the state of Colorado.
Hi, calling from Southern Colorado. Got a crazy kind of close story. My friend lives over here in the town we live on the south end of town, and just went over her house one night. We just had a movie night, we're watching The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, so we all stayed at the house. There's extra bedrooms, so me and my friend passed out on the couch, and then everybody went to bed, and even her brother and his wife and their little boy went to bed, and they had a separate room. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and my buddy's passed out, and next thing you know, I hear little kid voices and footsteps running past the couch, and I'm like, her nephew is asleep. And I start hearing little kid voices and laughing and giggling. And honestly, I thought I heard a playground. And I'm like, well, you're just losing your mind because I live right across the street from a school. It's just kids, I'm just like, whatever. But then I open my eyes, I realize it's 2:30 in the morning. And that's all I heard, and these footsteps going back and forth. And it's like little feet. Yeah, I was just really freaked out. So next morning, we get up, I tell my friend, she's like, you bring it, you're just crazy. And I turn to my friend that's next to me, the next day. And I'm like, hey, what's crazy is our kid voices, little footsteps. And he looks at me, dead serious. He goes, well, I didn't want to sound crazy, but I know what you were talking about. I heard it. I heard the little footsteps and the kids playing outside like it was a playground. And he goes, when I woke up, it was 2:45. And he goes, I was watching you watch that, and I was just pretending I was sleeping. I go, I'm not crazy, am I? He goes, no. I was like, all right, whatever. So a week goes by, we do it again. My friend doesn't show up until a little bit later that night because he's kind of freaked out. He's like, well, I don't know if I want to go over there. So we do the same thing again. Everybody goes upstairs. He actually goes upstairs in the extra spare bedroom. So I'm sitting there on the couch. I start hearing guys talk in the house. And I go, hello? And they're talking. I'm freaking out. There's no one there. Next thing you know, I hear dishes stuff moving in the kitchen. And the light starts flickering. And I look, I'm like, well, it's the cats. You're losing your mind. I look over. All three cats were in the tree just looking at me like, welcome to our world. I'm like, what? No way. You know what I mean? So, I grab the courage and I go to the kitchen. The light's flickering, so once I get up, the light stays on. There's a dinner table in there with 8 chairs. We pushed the chairs in. The chairs had moved away. They were all facing the wall. They were all spread out. And everything stopped. I went, oh, no. So I backed out of the kitchen. And I started praying, and I turned off the light, and I'm like, you're losing your mind. An hour later, her sister-in-law got up to go to work at 4:30, and it stopped at 4:15. And I realized what I just witnessed. But I've heard of little kid voices and stuff like that, but just had to share it with you. But thank you, and have a good day.
Thanks, caller. More little kid voices. Probably one of the worst disembodied voices that you can hear. Or at least the creepiest. Maybe a demonic voice would be a little worse, but not much worse, in my opinion. Whoever the voice came from, it's creepy stuff. We can't thank you enough, caller, for ringing in. Alright, gang, off to Pennsylvania, and off to our next call of the evening. Please welcome Kim to tonight's program.
Hello there. My name is Kim, and I am from Pennsylvania. So back in about 2012, and I will preface this by saying that I had never known anything about death before this point. Shortly after this, my grandmother had passed, and that was the first death I had ever experienced. So I had a prejudice going into everything as that everyone kind of lives until they're 90. So I used to clean houses, and I went to clean a house, and I had a second cleaner with me, and she was focusing on the downstairs while I cleaned the upstairs. And I started in the master bedroom and bathroom, and I was cleaning everything, and I got to the bedroom, which looked a lot like any other bedroom that you would expect from parents. And when I cleaned houses, I used to try and make everything put back the way that they were supposed to. But this particular house, I had thrown the pillows off to the side, and as I was putting everything back, I was like, oh, I messed up how the bed was. And I heard a man speak, and he said, it doesn't matter, she sleeps alone. And I looked around because I heard it as clear as day, and I was really unsure because maybe I had said it out loud or something like that, and I assumed that maybe a family member, maybe the son or something like that, had come along, and I looked around, no one was there. I saw no one, and so I put everything back the way that I thought it might have been, and just left it at that. I was like, that was weird. And then I had went downstairs to see how my coworker was doing, and our supervisor came in to make sure that we were doing everything that was supposed to be done. And around that time, the homeowner's daughter had come around, and I heard my supervisor talking and going like, oh, that's a really nice telescope that you have over there. And the daughter was like, yeah, it was my dad's. And that made my ears prick and going, what? And I was overhearing the conversation, and she was like, yeah, my dad had died a couple years prior, and we have a plaque for him in our living room. And a little bit later, I had looked at it, and he had been a firefighter, and he had died a few years prior. And she was talking about the family dynamic and how mom has been a widow since then. And that just made my blood run cold, because I had heard a man talk about mom saying, it does not matter, she sleeps alone. And to that day, the mom had not remarried, she was not dating anyone, and it was just a wild experience.
Thank you, Kim. A wild experience indeed. And it sure sounds like the father was still there. keeping an eye on things. Which is probably comforting if you're part of that man's family. But something tells me it might not be as comforting to folks like Kim, who didn't know him when he was living, and are only in the home temporarily. Like you said, Kim, a wild experience. And we thank you yet again for sending it in to us. Now, gang, our next entry comes to us from parts unknown. Please welcome Amber to the airwaves.
Hey, Derek. My name is Amber. I've been listening to your show for a couple of weeks now, and it's really triggering some memories that I've had. But today, I just wanted to tell you about one in particular that really stuck out to me. So this happened in Salt Lake City, and it was about 12 years ago, maybe. I was staying with a friend of mine. I was there in Salt Lake for a convention, and he didn't have a spare bedroom, so I was sleeping in the basement on the couch. And I've always had kind of an aversion to basements because in the house that I grew up in, I always felt like I was being watched. Like my entire life, always felt uncomfortable in the basement. And I kind of felt this way in this basement too, but I didn't really think anything of it. But when I was sleeping on the couch, I was kind of in a fetal position and my body was turned towards the stairs, so I was facing away from the couch cushions. So in the middle of the night, I'm guessing it was probably somewhere between 2 and 4. It was very quiet, and something woke me up. And so I kind of came to, and I started hearing this shuffling. It was clearly footsteps shuffling on the carpet. And I knew it wasn't my friend because my whole body, you know, when you get into those situations, when you're around weird energy, and like everything in my body just started to kind of prick. My solar plexus started going crazy, and I was just like, oh my goodness. But the kicker is that it said, follow me, wake up. And I just kind of curled into myself and said, nope, said it in my mind. And I rolled over and kind of like scooted over towards the cushions. I didn't hear anything walk away. Nothing else happened. I went back to sleep. So the next morning, my friend came downstairs to check on me, and I asked him, I said, hey, do your girls whose bedrooms were in the basement, I said, have they ever said that they felt uncomfortable or anything? And his face turned white. And he was like, yes, they don't like coming down here. What happened? And I told him, and he was just like, oh my gosh. But here's the crazy thing is it was his voice that said that to me. And I've heard things about like trickery, that sort of thing, like demons like showing up as little kids, that kind of stuff. I mean, I didn't sense that it was a demon, but I don't know. I mean, it was asking me to follow it, and I definitely did not have plans to do so. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting story that I wanted to share with you, and I love your show. I hope you stay well, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber. There it is again, a mimic asking someone to follow them. It sure sounds like something wants to lead us away. To where, I wish I could tell you. But it does sound awfully similar to the Fae folk, for whatever that's worth. Eerie stuff, Amber. We thank you again for calling.
One thing about throughout his training,
I think sometimes people get because it's bigger than just the word or just the act.
Now, what do you make of this next one from a caller named Nick in the state of Illinois?
Hey, Derek. Nick from Chicago here. This happened a couple months ago, so it was July or August, so I was sleeping with my window open. My apartment backs up to an alley that runs throughout the houses of my street. A lot of driveways back there. People take their trash out back there, things of that nature. So laying there asleep, have to get up for work pretty soon, so my alarm's about to go off, but something jolted me up about 15 minutes before my alarm is set for. My headboard is right next to the window at this point, so just laying there, complete silence. And then all of a sudden, something says something, and the best way to describe it, it's kind of hard to describe, is it was a scream, but it started off, almost sounded like normal talking, and then it kind of progressed into this deep kind of growl / scream. And it sounded like it was definitely coming from the alley in the back of my apartment. And what it sounded like was someone was, at first kind of calling for like a pet to come inside. So you'd imagine someone let their dog outside, they're calling their pet's name to come back inside. But then as the sentence kind of went on, I kind of progressed into, like I said, this deep kind of growl / scream. And it was really bizarre because right after this happened, just complete silence. Really no other noises after I heard this weird scream / talking. I think if it was, someone taking out their pet or calling to get their pet inside, you'd hear some other noise after, whether it's the dog moving around or doors opening and closing, but just complete silence after this. So not really sure what to think of it. Haven't heard anything since that's similar, but, I do want to say that sometimes there's homeless people that kind of travel throughout the alleys in our neighborhood, so it could have been, someone walking through the alley early in the morning, maybe they were just upset about something, but it didn't really sound like something that, a human really could be making, to be honest with you. It was pretty deep, and like I said, it sounded like it was really coming from the gut. Pretty creepy. Not sure exactly what could have caused it, but thought it was kind of cool with the recent Mothman sightings we've had here, so I love the podcast. Looking forward to the next episode. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Nick. So what do you think, gang? Is this akin to Christina's experience? A possible creature making these sounds? Possibly even our buddy, Bigfoot? Or could this have been any other cryptid of some sort? Or any animal, for that matter? Or was it just someone walking by, practicing their own monster sounds? Whatever it was, I sure hope that I don't run into it. Thanks again, Nick, for sharing the tale. And folks, that brings us to tonight's final entry. We got through a lot of them here this evening, but I have one more locked and loaded. So please welcome Bella, all the way from Texas.
Hi, Derek. This is Bella calling from Dallas, Texas. So it's important to note that before this story takes place, I had just visited Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas with my mom because we're both super into that kind of thing. And we actually ended up meeting up with some group that had been formed on like the Nextdoor app of moms that liked paranormal stuff. And they were super cool and my mom loved hanging out with them. And we ended up doing like a TikTok investigation where they live streamed it and had a really great time doing that. So we eventually left because I honestly got a little weirded out by the whole thing at a certain point. I didn't have a good feeling, so we ended up leaving after a while. Also, another strange thing to note is that following that experience for maybe 2 weeks or so, I would be like ordering food just at various places, and it would always be like, oh, I would be customer number 666, or my total would come out to be $6.66. This happened at least 4 or 5 times in like a 2-week span at different restaurants. So anyways, onto the story. This story takes place about a week later. I just recently graduated with my bachelor's degree, and I'm currently working as a vet tech, waiting on the results of my applications to different vet schools. So I work right now at a super small clinic with just 1 doctor and 4 staff members, including myself. So a couple weeks ago, we were closing up the clinic for the day, and I was the first one walking out the back door. My coworker was holding the door open to the alley where we park our cars, and I was facing that same alleyway. I was just looking forward, and I heard a very, very clear, hushed, Bella, from behind me. So I turn around, look at my coworkers, and all of them are looking back at me confused, and I stood there for a second, just said, what? And they all started laughing, asking if I was okay, and I replied, just saying like, okay, well, one of you said my name, but they were all just sitting there quiet and confused, and they just said, none of them had said anything at all. So we laughed it off, and I just assumed that I was exhausted and I just needed some rest. Quick side note, by this point in my job, I had been driving myself absolutely insane, seeing things out of the corner of my eyes, but I chalked it up to just being surrounded by death all the time with all the euthanasias and just being freaked out about it. So the next day at work was a pretty slow part of the day, and I was filling a prescription for one of our patients. At this point, we had nobody in the building except for myself, 2 coworkers, and my boss, who's extremely quiet and reserved. So once again, I heard an extremely clear, more clear than the day before, hushed, "Bella," from behind me. So I was like, okay, somebody's trying to get my attention. So I was gonna finish filling the prescription so I didn't lose track of what I was doing. I, turned the corner and replied, "What's up?" And they looked at me and just said, "Nothing." And once again, I was like, okay, well, which one of you needed something? And they both replied, "We don't need anything. Like, what's up?" And I was just like, okay, well, one of you needed something from me. And they just said, "No, we've been completely silent this whole time." So I was getting frustrated at this point, and I was like, if y'all are messing with me, I need to know now, or I'm going to go check myself into a ward. But they swore up and down that they weren't messing with me, and I've asked a million times, and I believe them that they were not. So, also important to note that I have awful hearing, and in retrospect, if they had even said my name in a normal tone of voice, from that distance, I would not have heard it. My hearing is bad, but it's also selective, and 99% of the time when somebody's talking to me, like directly to me, right next to me, I don't even hear it. So, same day, I was on my lunch break, went to Target to shop for birthday presents for my boyfriend, who I was going to go visit the following week. And I was walking down an aisle that was along the back side of the store, which had like smaller aisles perpendicular to it. And on the left side, where that shelving unit was, on the very bottom shelf, there was a bunch of spools of Christmas lights. And not a single person in the aisle. Nothing was moving in the aisles that connected to it. No shaking of the floor or anything. One of the spools of Christmas lights falls off the shelf, rolls across the aisle, and lands and stops directly in front of my feet. Like a foot, even if that. And just sits there. And I was just like, okay, I guess this is how my day's going. I looked around, nobody was there, the shelf wasn't moving. Nothing else in the entire shelf moved, shifted, shaked, fell, anything. So I tell my coworkers about it, and they just kind of laugh it off, and they just think I'm crazy. So I told my mom about everything after the whole day ended, and I'm not very religious, but she was just like, "Oh, I'll pray for you," and like, "This is awful." And I was just like, this is more inconvenient for me at this point than anything. Like, I was just getting irritated, but she was genuinely concerned. And I was just like, well, I appreciate your concern. And she's like, "You need to pray too." And I'm like, okay, whatever is gonna help you sleep at night, I guess. But yeah, I mean, after that, not a single thing has happened since. I still see things out of the corner of my eye every once in a while, but it could very well just be my eyesight being bad, or my hair, or being tired. I don't know. But I really enjoy the show, and I hope that you can use this. Bye.
Thank you, Bella. What do you think here, folks? Was Bella just having a bad day? Were these simply a string of misunderstandings and coincidences? Or was it, as it seems, there was, in fact, something otherworldly attached to Bella for that short time? Something she picked up at the Goat Man's Bridge. I'll let you be the judge, but I do want to thank you, Bella, for sharing the entry here tonight. And I want to thank all of tonight's callers for their contributions. And while we're at it, thank you, dear listener, for tuning in here this evening. Because that's going to do it for tonight. Monsters Among Us podcast is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes, Delaney Bowers, and Connor Ryan. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Give us a like and follow on our social media accounts. Give us a like and follow on YouTube. Join our Discord server and leave us a rate and review wherever you can do such a thing. Now don't forget, you can catch the show every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern on the UNX Digital Radio Network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. Now tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Code.ag Music, and Carl Casey at Whitepad Audio. Now watch our movie. BorregoTriangle.com is where you can find all the info. Listen to Monsters Among Us Jr. with your youngsters. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. And the hotline number for that program, for those of you that need it, is 833-MAU-KIDS. And lastly, join us in the Beyond for days worth of extra content, all for $5 a month. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click that Patreon tab. Alright, gang, that's all I have for you this evening. But meet me back here on Thursday for a brand new episode. But until then, keep it spooky and have a good night.